Welcome again to this month's community stream for the month of August. Today I'm joined with James Sturdivant. Hey James, how are you? James
Hi,
is James. Are you? What's your title at Microsoft?
I'm a software engineer at Microsoft.
Yeah, and you've been working on. Well, actually, you're acting as a maintainer for a handful of projects within the Bytecode Alliance. So I'm going to run through some project updates, and then we're going to dive deep on some of the projects that James has been involved in over the past month, and really past several months. And it's really starting to become a reality, which is really exciting. So on to some of these. And James, if I run into anything and I forget to add something, please holler and add in your own color commentary to this. It's all welcome.
Yeah,
So
sounds good.
Wasmtime v24 came out about 7 days ago. There are a ton of different updates to it, so I recommend always checking out the release notes. These bullets here are my favorite highlights, so my opinions, and is very biased. For the ones that I'm adding here, WASI runtime config and WASI key value proposals, these initial versions are added to Wasmtime. This was actually done by a new contributor, so really excited to see that come through. There's also a new interpreter for Wasmtime. It is not ready for consumption yet, but the work has begun, and that new thing is called Pulley. If you're paying attention to all of the project names within Wasmtime, they're very fun. They all kind of have an industrial bent, from crane lift to winch, and now Pulley. Super exciting. There is also significant work happening in WASI-NN. There's a lot of upstream specification work that's happening within the WASI subgroup. There's also a meeting group that happens within the Bytecode Alliance for folks that are interested in working on machine learning projects. That spec definition has been changing, and so Wasmtime and WAMR have both been getting updates over the past month. The WASM garbage collection work continues by Nick Fitzgerald. And I also pulled this one above the fold because I figure it impacts a lot of consumers. We now require Rust 178 for Wasmtime and crane lift to compile. For WAMR, 2.1.2 has come out in the past month. It was more than my single page on a screen in terms of just bullets all the way down the page of all the different types of enhancements and fixes. So I only pulled 3 above the line here. Again, like what I just highlighted, there's lots of activity happening in WASI-NN. So if that's something of interest to you, do pay attention to those changes and give us feedback. There are new APIs added to the WASM-C API. This is similar to what was done for 2.1.1, but if that's based on implementation feedback. And now there's also a new target. I don't know how to say that out loud, so I'm just going to say there's a new target. And if you're interested in RISC-V something, do check it out. So again, WASM tools also had a ton of different changes, but there's some pretty neat stuff. I want to show that there's, in terms of the WASM core spec proposals, a couple of these are now enabled by default inside WASM tools. That's part of because we've been getting those implementations completed all through the stack. There's a new command that we're all very excited to see. We've talked about it for a long time. It's called WASM Tools Component Unbundle. The idea is that you can take a component and extract the core WASM module that is inside that component. And that's really useful for like runtimes like Wasmtime, where you can share the machine code of the core WASM module. Now, consider a case where we're compiling in interpreter code. You can take the core WASM module that you've compiled into your interpreter and then reuse it or relink against it across other places. So that's one of the many different use cases for Unbundle. There has also been significant work from Christoph Pettig, who has been deeply focused on the C, C++, and embedding use cases. And he put in a change that I thought was really interesting around basically finding the right alignment and offset support for WASM32 and WASM64. And I know that there's a lot more work to support WASM64, but I like to highlight new work that's coming in and is well underway. Another project that is always worth highlighting because it's such a valuable resource is our component model book. I noticed over the past month we've had significant enhancements for the C and C++ tooling page. It is definitely an area where we don't have a componentized SDK, and in a bit you're going to see a demo from James that highlights why that's so helpful and handy. However, there is the WASI SDK, and there are steps for how you can integrate this stuff into your build system, although it can be a bit complicated, and that's why it's so wonderful. Milan Raj, who's a new contributor, built on top of some initial documentation by Sean. And so this page is one that I would like to highlight. Now, I think there's more work that we have to do here to make that a good experience. But between Christoph and Milan and Sean, I think that we're going to end up in a place that just about anybody can come in and build their first component with C or C++. So, on to events. We're almost done. WASMCon 2024, that is the 11th and 12th of November in Salt Lake City, Utah. The CFP is closed, but you can register to attend the event. There are a ton of amazing talks. I'm really excited to go. I'm definitely giving a workshop. I don't remember if I have any other talks, so I should probably look at that. But I've seen so many from Boeing to American Express to Adobe to I think Adobe and Akamai actually are on a talk together, just real clear industry use cases and end user talks that really are so valuable. We're moving away from the, kind of, this is an idea, deep tech talk, let's build this together, to hey, I took what you built and here's how to do it and actually deploy it and use it. And that's just so cool to see. So do join us for WASMCon 2024. There's also the Bytecode Alliance Plumbers Summit. That's September 26th and 27th in Redmond, Washington. It's going to be in person, but also with remote support. So if you can't attend in person, no problem. We'll be providing remote links. Now, if you're interested in attending, please email David Bryant at thebytecodealliance.org. We are working on getting maybe a different type of registration form, but right now we're focused on aligning our attendance with recognized contributors within the Bytecode Alliance. Our focus there is we've got a number of different roadmap items that we need to do. And there's a couple different collaboration sessions, and the style of the event is going to be very similar to Bacon of last year, which at that time that was actually co-located with WASMCon. WASMCon this year is actually co-loed with KubeCon. So it's a little bit later in November, so we wanted to meet a little bit sooner rather than later. All right, this is a new section that I haven't added before, but I just felt like everybody needed to know. There are two amazing blogs that I want to highlight. First one, the amazing Dan Goman, aka Some Fish Code. He published last month a capabilities and file systems blog post. One thing that is a tricky bit for just about everybody that gets started with WASI is what in the world is a pre-open. That's usually a new concept for people. It's got some rough edges, and Dan has a lot of really great ways to make that better. So if you're interested in that, do check out his blog post there. And there's also Chris Fallon. Chris just totally blew my mind with his work on Weevil. We've highlighted it before here on the stream, but his blog posts are deep, technical, computer sciencey awesomeness. And this one is basically how to compile JavaScript in a very, very interesting way. And again, spoiler alert, right? He's been working on Weevil for a while, so that there's some application there. But if that is something that's of interest to you at all, I totally recommend checking out both of these, because these are easily some of the best blog posts I've seen all year. So, and that is my round of everything for content updates. So I would like to transition now to you, James. Well, we probably don't want to have things.
Not quite done yet.
Yeah, we're not quite done yet. I don't know how to. Boom. Okay. And yeah, just to highlight that we actually are live right now in this moment. So if you want to ask any of your questions, please drop those in the YouTube chat or in Zulip. And we also have a wonderful David Bryant who's helping us curate any questions that come through. He'll let us know, and we'll be able to answer those. So Do you want to go ahead and dive straight into code, James, or would you like to talk a little bit first and give us an intro on some of the things you've been working on?
Yeah, sure. I can maybe do a quick introduction, and then we can kind of take a quick look at how that gets applied in the code. Over the last couple of years, I've been working, or I guess about a year now, I've been working with in the C# space for all the component work. And one of the things we've been working on, and there's a whole bunch of people involved in this. I see Scott, I think, on the call right now. And he's been involved, and Timmy, and has been just getting WIT BindGen working for C#. And so we now recently, in the last few months, have gotten all of the major bindings finished for C#. And you can use WIT BindGen to generate bindings for C#. And this is pretty exciting. The challenge there is there's a whole bunch of different things that need to be set up. So you need to install WIT BindGen, you need to install the WASI SDK, you need to make sure all these versions align and a bunch of things, and then you have to execute them and get them all lined up. You have to have your WIT, you have to get the WIT pulled down and used in the right place and get it all configured. And so one of the things that someone from the .NET team worked on was a prototype of a WASI SDK that would kind of pull all this together. And so now we've created a NuGet package that bundles WIT BindGen and bundles the SDK, and it bundles a bunch of other tooling so that you can just add a .NET project to it and then install it into your C# project. And then on top of that, one of the other challenges is you need to get WIT. So if you wanted to build something for like the WASI HTTP WIT, then you would need to go and find that WIT, get it installed properly, get it down on your machine. And then if they change, like you just bumped to version 2.1 of the WASI HTTP spec. And so if you wanted to pull that, you now have to kind of replace all that code. And so one of the things we've been working on more broadly was kind of how can you potentially package not just WIT, but your WASM components and push them to a registry and kind of leverage some of the maybe cloud native solutions that are out there. So through the CNCF WASM working group, we brought together some folks from Bytecode Alliance, from different end user projects, and some Kubernetes teams. And we came up with a WASI artifact definition. And that WASI artifact definition lets you hold, thank you, Bailey, for linking that there. And that lets you kind of package these things up and push them to a registry. And then what I'm going to show you here today when we dive into the code is how do we actually use those OCI artifacts to build components with them, which is really exciting. So I don't know if you can share that screen and bring up that artifact link. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Totally. Do you mind let's go ahead and drop, I will go and drop some links for some of the things that you've talked about so far. Like, for example, I think this one is probably a good one to add, componentize.net. Are you going to explain that as part of your demo? I think maybe that's a new thing, because I know that you've been cutting new releases for it. So yeah.
Yeah. So can everybody see my code now, I think?
It looks good to me.
Okay, cool. So what I have here is a C# project, and we're going to add componentize.net to it. And componentize.net is a NuGet package, very similar to like an NPM package, or if you're Rust, then a crate. And so this is just a simple .NET application. There's not much in it. There's this myapps.csproj. This defines, some general things. The key thing here to note, if you're not a C# person, is we're just saying, hey, we're going to build this thing for WASI WASM, and that's pretty much the key thing inside here. And then down here we have a program. This is some C#, and notice that squiggly red lines. It's saying, hey, we can't build this yet. But this handle may look kind of familiar. So it's the WASI HTTP interface from WIT. So it takes a handle. It's a handle, takes a request, and you give it a response back. We got a little bit of code in here, but we don't have any of the WASI bindings yet, and so that's where the bytecode, the WASM SDK will help us out. So what
Is that why we're seeing red squigglies?
Yes, we're these because we haven't pulled in all that extra code. First thing we can do is add this package. So this is just the NuGet package. You see, it's pretty simple to add. And in a moment here, we'll see it added to our CS proj. So we've got the SDK added, and then so components with .NET from this, but we still don't have any of the WIT. And so what we want to do is we can, with this SDK, it also adds a little bit of extra stuff to .NET, which lets us specify a WIT file. So if I paste this in here, what we're seeing is, let me see here. We're saying, hey, get this WIT, save it as this file in this WIT folder. You'll notice we don't have a folder over here right now. We want to target the proxy world, and it's going to be the WASI HTTP 0.2 specification that we want to target. And this may look familiar. This is just an OCI registry artifact. And when I hit save, behind the scenes, the NuGet package, the SDK that we have, is going to go out to and grab it from execute WIT bindgen against it. And so if we look at behind the scenes, we should see some code. Let me see. There it is. Yeah. So when I hit save, the thing that happened was it said we're going to go out and pull from that endpoint, the registry there, and then it saved that file, and then we're going to execute WIT bindgen against it, and we'll see that it's started to write out all of the bindings in C#. And so it goes and does all that. And when we go over to program now, we'll see we no longer have these, and we even have IntelliSense, so we can go to the actual bindings that were generated behind the scenes for us, and we can kind of take a look at what they look like. We can go to definition. We can, with the IntelliSense that VS Code kind of gives you through this whole SDK. So then the next step would be to build this project. So let's see. So I can go ahead and start building it. And so this is going to go out and build this binary. Some folks 0.2 component support directly into .NET, so we don't have to use any of the polyfills or anything. We get a native WASI when we hit .NET build. So this is going to take a moment to generate. So what I wanted to show in the background is what this registry. I'm going to.
It does look like it had already finished, which is pretty cool.
Just clear my screen. But the config type is vnd.wasm.config. And so this is just some JSON that defines that it's a component or a module. It tells you the imports and exports of the stuff that's in the WASM component. And then at this layer here is this application.wasm, and that's what we pulled down into this folder over here, is just that layer. And that layer contains the component. So we can run something like WASM tools against that folder, and you'll see, hey, that we normally have to go kind of copy paste into this system, but it's being generated, it's being given right to WitBindGen and generating those bindings for us. Okay, so quickly, so we've got a build. The build did succeed. There's a couple warnings we're still working through, but now I can take that component and serve it using WASMtime. So in just a second. And if we go over to the PowerShell here and we hit that endpoint, we get a hello world. So you can see just through adding a few lines into your CS proj, and with this NuGet package, you can start building components. And it's pretty exciting. And yeah, that's kind of the cool thing we've been doing, making it really easy to consume all of these things. There is one other thing we can do, which is now take the component that we've built and then publish it back up to a registry, if you want to see that as well. But I don't know if you have any questions, Bailey. But that's kind of the cool stuff we're doing.
I would love to see the loop. Let's end the loop. Let's say, all right, we've pulled down a WIT package. It was in an OCI format, and it told us, because of this media type, I know that it's a WASM component. We have support for WASM components being basically WIT only, so to speak. So you've got a WIT.wasm that defines all of the interfaces that you want to use, specifically the WASI HTTP 020. It's old now, it's not 021, just saying, but that's okay. You now have an easy flow for it to be able to pull in. And so now you've compiled a .wasm is basically what you showed. At the very end, you took WASMtime serve. WASMtime serve is, WASMtime, I think everybody generally knows, is a Bytecode Alliance project that is a WebAssembly runtime. It has multiple different CLI flags and run modes. So there's WASMtime run, there's WASMtime explore, which is actually another cool one we've talked about before. And then the one that used is WASMtime serve, which is basically providing an HTTP server implementation that is backed with WASI HTTP. So a component must target the WASI HTTP world, which your component did by looking at the OCI WIT definition from your flow, and then you were able to eventually print "Hello World." There's a lot of work, actually, that came, had to come to be able to get to that point. And I know you've been working on it for a year. I know Timmy Selesmo has he worked on the BindGen side and for C#. So many kudos to Scott Way. And we also had a ton of other Microsoft support, not just you, James. Do you mind highlighting some of those names? I remember Aaron, Pavel, and a few others.
Yeah. Pavel has been really involved. Aaron, Steve Sanderson was the person who kind of did the initial prototype of that, the tool, the NuGet package that we worked on. And then I know there's a ton of people behind the scenes that have been also helping with that as well. So.
One of my favorite people, Joel Dice, as well, who came in and helped us finish the resources of the WASI API. He's done that a few times now for a few other different languages, and he was able to come in and figure out some of the key challenges that we had remaining for the C# with BindGen and implementation. So I think that's
Yeah.
a lot. Okay, so
Well,
kudos to a ton
and
of people.
there's even more people because coming up with that OCI spec and just defining the WASI artifact was a big team effort with Taylor and Calvin. Luke helped us out. Brandon from the OCI team helped us out, and Land was involved in some of the early discussions as well. And so like there's a whole bunch of people who came together to kind of start to design how this interaction between OCI would work. And so I just want to make sure all those people have some call outs for that.
Yeah, that's the thing about bridging across technology stacks, right? You meet this amazing intersection of people along the way, and that's why it's also such a huge milestone. So let's finish it out. Like let's close the loop.
Okay, so behind the scenes, one of the tools that's created to start to bring some of this together is called WKG, or WACKage is how I've been using the word. And so the .NET Componentized actually is using this CLI behind the scenes to pull the OCI artifact down. So we can also use that to push it up. And maybe in the future, this could be integrated directly into some .NET tooling, or I think Cargo Components has some of the support in early form as well. And so you could potentially do like Cargo Component publish, and it would push it up to an OCI. So what I have here is, I actually only have Docker installed on my Linux box, so I switched over to my WSL. And so what I have is WACKage installed. I have OCI, and push is a command, and then I can specify the registry that I would like to push it to. And just as a side note, I've already logged into Docker Hub or GitHub container registries through Docker CLI, so I'm all authorized and everything. And then I just point to the WASM component that I'm using. And so I'm using WSL, so I'm just there's a bunch of information to get to the actual image on my Windows machine. But once I hit that, that should push up, and then I think I can share my screen, my other screen. Yeah, so it pushed it to this. Anybody can go see this right now. And if I think I have a link somewhere here. Hold on a second. There it is. Yeah. Okay, let me share this screen here.
Yeah, that's the thing about GHCR. I wasn't fast enough to type out the whole URL there. So you get a full until you get it right. I didn't get it right. So if you can lazy link me, I will post it in the chat so we can all pull from your super secret. Also, is the package already publicly visible? That's the one thing I
no, because I just published it. I literally just published it with that command. It's still showing up as private, so I can make it public. There's actually, if you saw, I think this one is the same one, but it's the .NET. It's the same exact code. It's just published a couple weeks ago when I was testing. So you can see, yep, it's here, and it's up on the registry. Oh, you're not.
Let me share your screen. 1 second. All right, here it is. Oh, yeah.
So here it is. It's private right now, but you can see I just published it 2 minutes ago with this tag, and here it is. And so it's up on the registry. I have another one up there that's public right now. I can turn this public right after this call, but yeah, so it's as simple as that. It's just kind of WACKage push. Again, Taylor did a bunch of work here to enable this. And yeah, this is the beginning of being able to share these packages in a cloud native way. So I can now, there's a bunch of tools that can consume these now. So I believe WASM Cloud supports this image, so you can point it at a registry here. Another project that I work on, which is Run WASI, it's a Containerd shim, and it supports these images. So you can pull these images, and it'll run this artifact in a Kubernetes environment for you. And so there's a bunch of tools. You can use Wackage to pull this down and just execute it WASM time, just like I just showed a few minutes ago. And so there's a lot of tooling and support that's kind of come together in the last few months that begin to work with this OCI.
And if I wanted to, I could whack it with another component. I'm sorry, it cracks me up, all the W verbs that we've been coming up with. So you just wackaged something up. Now, if I could then use Wackage to pull down your artifact, and if I wanted to do a pattern like service chaining, which kind of, I think that is largely a term that Luke's coined. But essentially, I can take two WASI HTTP components, one that needs to call the other effectively, and I can compose them together or whack them together. And then I would have something that, is in a single component. There's a lot of advantages, but they are still composed together with shared nothing linking. So they each have their own linear memory. However, they could be running in the same process, which means when I'm calling between those two, it's a nano process, nanosecond, nanosecond away versus, a typical network call, which is like milliseconds. So that's a pretty huge advancement. And I love it. This is, you're basically the first ecosystem actually to show this end to end. We just got Wackage stuff working. I pushed up the WASI stuff, and I used WASM Tools component wit to be like, look, there's wit in it. It looks right to me. And very soon after, you got this working in componentize.net, which is amazing. And I think the other languages to follow very soon. Inside the Bytecode Alliance, there's Cargo Component, and that's sort of on the REST side of things. I don't know the status on the Python side of stuff. I know that there's a PyWheel something going on there. That's going to be a Brett Cannon and Joel question and answer to see how we get to that. But in terms of where we are with C# and .NET, where do you think we are? How close are we to anybody just coming in and saying, I want to use this and get started?
Yeah, so right now, what I just showed, anybody can get started with. The compiler that we're operating with is only currently supported on Windows, and we're really close to getting it supported on Linux. And that compiler is the native ahead of time LLVM compiler. And Joel's been, not Joel, Scott's been doing a ton of work on that. And I think actually Joel's been helping out as well. There's a whole bunch of people doing a lot of work on that to enable it for Linux and Mac OS. So that support should be coming in the next few weeks, I think. I think they just got the build working for those. And then the .NET 9 preview has support for Mono. There are some rough edges there. It is in preview, it's experimental, but you can get all this working. And I am working on adding support into the .NET, componentize.net, so that kind of makes it a smoother experience there. So yeah, you can go out and try this right now. It does work, only works on Windows right now, but should be adding other platforms pretty soon. Actually, the component that comes out, just to be clear, is completely cross-platform, as you'd expect for WASM component.
So WASM component should be, yes.
Just the tooling itself around it, yeah.
So if you are a developer who works on Windows and you love C#, you should be able to find happiness starting with the componentize .NET project. Is that the one that you would tell them to go to first? Hello, I'm writing my first component ever. I'm probably going to look at this resource, and then I'll probably go and look at the component model book, I would think, to kind of understand, once I've made this, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
There's sort of a second step there, but you should be able to replicate exactly what you just did and be able to serve a hello world, which is great.
Yeah, we have a ton of examples inside the componentized.net.
Perfect.
There's some samples on how to do a whole bunch of different things, including composing multiple components together. There are underneath the test example too, there's different ways to use the WIP BindGen to and with WASM tools to kind of take two different projects that compose two different WASM components and put them together as a separate binary. And so it's kind of all built into the thing there. So that would probably be my first place to go as far as like getting started. And then going to the docs and trying to understand what happened behind the scenes.
So we have a question here. Could they get started with just .NET 8 and get something working, or do they need to be on the .NET 9 preview?
That's a good question. Yeah, so what I was showing you today was actually in .NET 8. It is using a package that's built, you'll see it's a separate package that gets brought in. It's a completely separate compiler. And so you can get started on .NET 8 today with that LLVM, but it is experimental. It's not like a supported by Microsoft currently. It's supported by the community. And then .NET 9 just added the same support for the mono side of things, and that is again an experimental. But once you have .NET 9 Preview 7, that should work. I believe there's a couple small rough edges there, but if you drop it into componentized.net and ask questions, I can help there, or stop by the Bytecode Alliance Zulip, and we can help get you moving in the right direction.
So I guess what I would recommend people, if they asked me where to get started, I would probably tell them to do the .NET 9 preview release. It's a preview release. Know what that means. And please join us in giving us feedback, reporting issues, and being active inside the Bytecode Alliance componentized.net. We also have a Zulip channel for our guest language subgroup. I think that's another really great place for people to come and ask questions. So under SIG guest languages, there's one for some of the C# work, I believe, a stream there. I'm like looking for it right now on the stream, and I'm being slow and dumb, so I can't find it. I'm pretty sure there is one though, and if there isn't, you can create a stream and we'll see it and get you directed to the right person.
Yeah, we have a C#.NET collaboration channel where you can come in, and I think there's a bunch of different people that be able to answer questions there.
Cool. We do have more questions.
Sure.
I can help answer this one, but I'd like you to take the first pass at it. How do Whackage and Warg relate? And are they interoperable? And how are tool chains expecting to support one or the other?
Yeah, so when I started looking at kind of the OCI stuff about a year and a half ago or something, one of the things that we had was Warg, and having Warg support different backends. So there was a file backend, and then there was also an OCI backend. And so my understanding is that eventually, that Warg would have a user front end, and OCI could potentially be a backend for Warg there. So it's kind of a Whackage is the front end tooling to be able to push and pull and play with things directly from OCI, but I think it also supports Warg, the protocol, and then Warg could be backed by an OCI. So that's my understanding. And if you want to clarify anything there.
No, that's excellent. The only thing I would add to that is that they are sort of like, there's like the Warg protocol side of things, which its objective is around sort of package transparency. But if you have an OCI artifact itself, that means that it can plug into existing ecosystems like GHCR and all these other tool chains that already have OCI support. So in terms of what does the ecosystem have to do to be able to support these WASM OCI artifacts, very little, versus a different and new protocol, which may take different registry. So they sort of facilitate in a lot of ways different use cases. If you're looking for having a fully transparent log all the way through, you'd probably be more interested in Warg, but if you're using OCI and you're using some of the tools that those ecosystems use today to validate and attest the chain for OCI, and you already have that set up, then this will work great for you. So we've got more questions. Are you ready? So I think one thing to clarify for people is, okay, we've been talking about AOT, the LLVM side, mono. Do you mind giving us sort of a lay of the land in this ecosystem?
Yeah. I'll try to do my best here. It's been a while since I've actually been in the .NET ecosystem myself, and so I've been just getting back into it in the last few months. But so WASM support and so just everything I say, I'm going to try to represent it as best as I can, but I may have some of the details wrong. So .NET like 7 started to add WASM support and the way they did that was through Mono. And Mono is a project that was an open source project that has evolved to become a part of like the .NET open source ecosystem. And the Mono runtime supported WASM, and now they're starting to support WASI through that. But there's also an alternative compiler, the LLVM compiler, which is in .NET experimental repository. And that initially got a little bit further ahead on the WASI side of the world to start to build these components. And so you can either choose, there's kind of 2 different paths that you can choose. You can choose the LLVM, the native ahead of time compiled LLVM version, which invokes LLVM behind the scenes, or you can go down the .NET mono, like .NET solution, which uses Mono to execute the WASM. So I don't know if that was super clear, but hopefully that helps add a little bit of color to what's going on here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people assume that WASM support in general, it's like a Rust, C++ thing. Maybe you can do some magic in a JavaScript web VM, and that's it. And what we've seen over the past year and a half is really this huge explosion in support across languages. But the techniques that are required to make that work, that compilation work, there is a reason why there was this previous state where if you were a statically typed language that didn't have a garbage collector, WASM's very much in reach for you. And so with the C# work, it sounds like there were a couple different approaches, different types of, from an interpreter to ahead of time compiler to approach this. I've found that it doesn't matter that it's not. This is a general statement, not specific to C#, but consistently when people add ahead of time compilation support, it feels like that gets them 80 to 90% there to be able to support WASM. Like that is like that one next step. And we're seeing that in several different languages. And so it doesn't surprise me that what you're saying here, which is this AOT based version was able to get a little bit further along. That makes that jives with what I've seen in a lot of these other ecosystems. So when .NET 9 releases, is this still going to be kind of an experimental flavor that folks would be able to get, like this target? I know, for example, CPython supports WASI, but it's at like a tier 3 or a tier 2 support. Is there an equivalent to that in the .NET space?
Yeah, so both of the different compiler options here, the native ahead of time LLVM and the mono version, will both be experimental in .NET 9. And so through GitHub, you can get support, but it's not officially supported through like the .NET team in Microsoft. So, but there's a really strong community around folks who are supporting through the GitHub repository and contributing there. So it sounds very similar to like a tier 3 type
Got it. Yeah.
support scenario.
New targets, they never come out without having at least some phase of experimental for a while. But that's really exciting and that's huge progress. If I were somebody that I wanted to get started and know how to help, like how do I contribute? Where would you point them?
Yeah, I would say the Zulip chat is a great spot. We meet bi-weekly for C#. So through, I don't know if you have a link to
I can get all these things.
Yes. So there's a repository with a link to the C# meeting. We just actually met this morning. So we'll be meeting again in 2 weeks. So you can come join us there and start to get involved. There's folks from all the way across the stack, from all the way down in the compiler and all those things, all the way up to whip bindgen to doing UI things. And so you can kind of jump in wherever you feel most comfortable. But that's a good spot. The Zulip Bytecode Alliance is another great spot to start asking questions. And any of the repositories, you can just open up an issue and start asking questions.
And if you really want to win brownie points from me, like I was just looking, we don't yet have a doc guide for C# and using the componentized.NET in our component model book.
Oh yeah.
Might be a good first contribution for somebody to get started. You should be able to take what James just demoed and put that straight into one of these. And we use, I believe, MD books. So it's just, you just need to know how to write some markdown to be able to contribute. So that's something that is a good first place for just about anybody. And then
we even have in componentized.net, I think the sample that you do in that in the documentation there is the calculator, and we have the sample in our thing. So you could essentially bring all these things together and have a pretty good contribution there. Awesome. So before we close this out, if anybody else has any more questions, please ask them in the chat, and I'll ask James. But I always like to end on a what's next. What's the next thing that you're going to do for this project or ecosystem, and what are you most excited to see come to fruition, even if it's not something that you're necessarily going to work on? Oh gosh,
it's easy.
Yeah, I think I'm super excited for the work that's happening that Joel's doing around the HTTP client. So you'll be able to use the HTTP client, the .NET HTTP clients. When you do HTTP client new and you create a new client and make calls, it will just compile to WASM. Right now, you saw some of the code that today was kind of like a lot of low level stuff that we did. Whereas we can make that really simple using the standard C# APIs that you're familiar with. And that work is in progress and very exciting.
Yes, I know I can find a link to this. I know I have seen it before. But what James is essentially saying is that Joel has a version where he has adapted WASI HTTP, not with like a WASM time adapter, not something like that, but I mean with essentially a shim where you write what is idiomatic to C# and .NET and write like a normal HTTP client call that even supports streams and that maps to making WASI HTTP calls. So that's what gives a WebAssembly component that portability, because that WASM component then compiles into something that needs an import for WASI HTTP, exports its handler so somebody can call on it, and you can take that component and run it anywhere. And the developer that's writing that C# code is writing normal C# code, not like crazy generated code that that James showed here. I see that we maybe also have a question in the chat in Zulip. Let me see. I'm going a little slow today. I don't see it. Actually, let me try one more time. Oh, that's the link to, oh, I see. Here's a link to the discussion around what we're talking about for C# collaboration. Our guy behind the curtain, David Bryant, had helped us out with posting what that actual stream is that James had mentioned for a good place to come and chat with us. Thank you, David. And so what is the next major work item for just componentize.net? What's the next big feature?
Yeah, so the thing I'm working on is adding the mono support into Componentize. So we talked about the couple different types of compilers. Right now, we target that LLVM, and so that's the only one that's supported, but you will be able to generate these using the Preview 7 of .NET 9 and the mono compiler, or the mono runtime. So.
Very cool. All right. Well, hey, James, are you going to be at the Bytecode Alliance Plumber Summit? Do you know?
I am. I'm also going to be at WASMCon. And I'll be doing another talk about all of componentize.net, and also a deeper dive into the OCI artifact that we kind of touched on here, showing how it's built and how it gets run across different platforms.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Okay. Well, thank you, James, for joining me and sharing the work that you've been doing over the past year. I personally really appreciate it. I can't wait to start working with it. I think the community has been waiting for it and can't wait to start working with it. And so, yeah. And thank you to everybody else that collaborated.
Yes, exactly. And you know, when I started on all this a year ago, I didn't know very much about any of this, and so it's a super welcoming community. Come join us and ask questions, and maybe you'll be presenting on this next year.
Yeah, you should not be surprised that I will ask anybody that is doing cool stuff to share. So awesome. Thank you, and I hope everybody has a good night.